We do believe Board Member Price is joining us, right?
You are on, ma'am.
Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you.
At least that's our belief.
That's our understanding.
Yep.
All right, well, if anybody has the capacity, we can go ahead and get started, but if anybody has the capacity to check in with her, that would be much appreciated.
I could, but then I'm afraid if she's trying to call, I'm going to mess her up. I'm going to give her a minute or two because she usually will call me if
Okay.
she's having trouble.
Okay.
Or she might have just gone right to exec for all I know.
Right. Okay, well, we do have 4 board members. We are missing Board Member Price, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and do as we always do, the Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the New Mexico flag in English and in Spanish, and then the acknowledgement of tribal land. Anybody feeling inspired to lead these today?
I'm happy to do
I'll help as needed.
Okay.
Okay,
Sarah, why don't you go in English, and Dr. Garcia, if you're willing, in Spanish. Thank you.
perfect.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el símbolo Zia de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas.
And the acknowledgement of tribal land.
We acknowledge the original people of the land, the Pisuque Pueblo people and other tribal nations, and ask them to walk with us today as we share and learn together.
Thank you very much. Moving on to approval of the agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Dr. Gonzalez, the second by Vice President Garcia. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on the agenda. Vice President Garcia.
Yes.
Secretary Bozay.
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
And Board Member Price does not seem to be here yet. And the president votes yes. We have approved the agenda. Now we are on Roman numeral number 2, executive session, limited personnel matters. Secretary Bozay.
Madam President, I would like to make a motion that the Board of Education move into executive session where we will discuss limited personnel matters related to the superintendent contract for Hilario Larry Chavez.
So there's a motion. I'll second it. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Vice President Garcia.
Yes, Madam President.
Secretary Bozay.
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
And the president votes yes. We will see you all in executive session. Dr. Garcia, if you wouldn't mind checking on Board Member Price. She does not appear to be in executive session, I'm told.
I'll check in, but I wanted to ask you about what time you would like us to be back.
I'm hoping I can text you and maybe I'll give you a 5-minute warning or something. Does that work? I mean, I think it will be, I don't know, my guess would be 4:45 if I had to guess.
4:45. All right. Yeah, you can text me. I'll try to get staff back, but just so that we can gather everybody back. I know that we put a word out to all of the all-stars, principals and everybody to watch this study session. Of course, they can watch it on their own time, but that gives me an idea. All
Okay.
right, thank you. Yeah, shoot
Thank
me a
you.
text if you're 5 minutes when you're about ready. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President, who's gonna be in executive session? Us five and the
And
attorney?
our board council, yeah.
All right, so I want to make sure. Okay, thank you. So we have
Okay.
to go down, we got to go to a different screen, right?
You have to go to the other link. Yep,
All right, thank
All
you.
right. See you there.
thanks. Bye.
Hi, Dr. Weaver.
How are you?
Hanging in there.
You're in a different office. Are you in Santa Fe?
No, I was in Santa Fe. No, I'm in a different office at home.
Gotcha.
I just changed rooms.
Yep.
Got tired. Yeah, just I'm at a different. My neck's been bothering me, so I'm at my. I'm in my like art room, hobby room,
Gotcha.
where I'm sitting on a stool. I might switch back later today, or I may go stand in the hallway. No, I don't want to be stuck in that building later tonight by myself. So,
Yeah, that's the tough
but I was
thing
there
about-
earlier.
That's the tough thing about not living in Santa Fe when we have meetings that are late. It's, should you jet home real
Oh, I've
quick?
driven. I mean, when I had the condo, that was better, but I've driven back at 9, 10, 11, so that wasn't unusual. I enjoyed living in Santa Fe until I got moved.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I believe that'll change your mind, right?
It was a little scary and stuff, and was wooded and dark, and they never could light it up properly.
Yeah.
And so it was a little unnerving. My presentation just got all out of order.
Hi, Dr. Garcia, and can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure I'm live. No.
We can hear you, Mr. Garcia.
But I think we are live, and yes, we can hear you.
Thank you.
Okay, see Secretary Bozay, heard Vice President Garcia. Dr. Gonzalez. Marvelous, marvelous. Hoping Board Member Price will join us shortly. She will either be on the phone or it is possible she might come in under Linda Trujillo's identity. Just to say, because I think Alma is the gatekeeper or somebody.
He
Well,
was asking for the Zoom number again. We had sent it. They're coming on. They just requested the number again.
great. All right, let's go ahead and just move slowly out of executive session. How about Secretary Bozay?
Sounds good. Madam President, I would like to make motions to bring the Board of Education out of executive session where we discuss limited personnel matters regarding the superintendent contract for Hilario Larry Chavez. No action was taken.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Bozay for the motion, Dr. Gonzalez for the second. We'll go ahead and take a roll call vote coming out of executive session. Vice President Garcia.
Yes, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Secretary Bozay,
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez,
Yes,
And the president votes yes. We currently do not have board member Price, but we are now out of executive session. We'll go ahead and move on to introduction of the interpreter. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Para servicio de traducción en español, marque 701-802-5152, número de acceso 4277932 #.
Now we do want to move one of our action items up, but as we don't yet have board member Price, do we have many public forum?
Madam President, I'm not sure. Mr. Donowski, how many people do we have for public forum?
I don't
I
see
will call.
him
I don't see
in
him on the meeting.
the meeting. Well, ideally, let's go ahead and do public forum.
He's coming on. I'll go ahead and start reading the public forum rules.
Thank you.
Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. No sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. Mr. Donowski will give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue is allowed only during the public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it is on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. Please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. Please do not discuss employee matters which may result in disciplinary action. Instead, notify the employee's supervisor, the Human Resources Department, or the superintendent. And I think we are ready to go. Hold on. Ms. Price needs to be promoted as panelist, either Alma or Joe Abeda.
And Mr. Donarski,
She's
before
on the
we,
phone. I'm sorry, she's on the phone, but I can't promote her since she's not joining in via web. But she can speak.
She's
Okay.
on the.
it's, in
All
other
right,
words, she can speak. I think we're okay. But if I could, Mr. Donarski, can you just advise us what number of emails we have for public forum this evening?
Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Garcia, there are 0 people signed up for public forum tonight.
Okay. Well, there we go. That simplifies things.
Let me just see what's going on with Ms. Price. You want to give me a second?
Hang on. I think she's okay. Lorraine,
Okay.
can you, board member Price, can you hear us? It looks like your phone is muted, but it's clear that, there we go.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, can you hear me now?
we can.
Oh, I sound like that commercial. Can you hear me now?
All right, thank you very much, everybody, for getting board member Price with us, but yes, we can hear you perfectly. So now I would like to make a motion that we bring up item 7C under board discussion and possible action, the superintendent contract with Eladio Larry Chavez, that we bring it up to above Roman numeral 5, the finance subcommittee, which is where we are now on the agenda. So that's a motion.
I will second that.
Thank you, Secretary Boze. We'll do a roll call vote on moving that agenda item. Vice President Garcia,
Yes, Madam President.
Secretary Boze,
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Price. I think you've muted.
Yes,
There we go.
yes.
Marvelous. Thank you very much. Okay.
Madam
now,
President, just to confirm, that was just item 7C.
Just item 7C, correct. So now, on item 7C, the superintendent contract Eladio Larry Chavez. I will go ahead and make a motion that the Santa Fe Public Schools Board of Education amend its offer to Eladio Larry Chavez to serve as superintendent of Santa Fe Public Schools from July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2022 at an annual contract rate of $175,000.
Second, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Any further discussion? We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Vice President Garcia,
Yes, Madam President.
Secretary Boze,
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Price,
Yes,
and the president also votes yes. And just to say, we now have more accurate information on comparable superintendent salaries in New Mexico. And as a flagship district in a high-cost area and a competitive superintendent market, the board has agreed we need to be more in line with the pay in other districts. It's important that we do right by all of our people in order to maintain our high standards in the Santa Fe Public Schools. This is what's fair for our new superintendent. So thank you to the board for this work.
With that, board members, I'd like to take leave of you. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for your counsel, Board Counsel Ortiz. Okay, we are moving on to Roman numeral 5 on our agenda, which is the Finance Subcommittee. And I believe all of the items A through H under that Roman numeral are included in the presentation. Is that correct, Dr. Garcia? You're muted, I think.
Yes, Madam President, I got kicked off, and so I just rejoined you. I'm assuming that you already took action on the contract, but I didn't get to hear your question. I'm
The
sorry.
question was on basically items A through H, as we're seeing on the Finance Subcommittee screen here, that those are all covered in the presentations. In other words, I don't need to read
Yes,
them out
ma'am.
one at a time. I can
No,
just
no.
say, now over to you. Take it away for
There
the
you
Finance Subcommittee.
Yes, you may. Yes, you may.
Thank
And
you.
I, before we get started, I want to just tell the board that Mr. Martinez and I and Mr. Eric Harrigan, I felt were a very good team. We presented to, I can't remember who we presented to, but it was the people that would be selling our bonds. And we had a very good bond sale presentation. And I also told them what a great board we had in terms of its stability and its focus and its stewardship. And I think it was a successful presentation. And Mr. Martinez, this was his first time actually leading and presenting, did a great job. So congratulations, Mr. Martinez. And I'm sure Mr. Harrigan will tell us more when we have that special meeting on the sale of the ETN bond. So now we're shifting gears. And Mr. Martinez, I dropped my presentation when I got off line just a few minutes ago. So you may have to coach me, which are my slides. But I think I'm in pretty good shape. My slide 1?
Yes, ma'am.
I am. Okay. All righty. Can you go ahead and share the screen?
Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead and go. Thank you. So, you know, you all can read, so I'm not going to read this to you. But, you know, as always, we want to maintain solvency. We kept a good look on the cash balance and the policy. You know, we collectively, the board made a decision to consciously go under the 5% for a variety of reasons last year. And we are looking at the long term as well as the short term as we plan this budget. I think I shared with you that we've been told this was probably going to be one of the most difficult budgets in 100 years, they said. I'm like, oh my gosh. As we've been working on it, I can tell you why. And so I want you to keep this in the back of your mind as we go through this. We got a brand new SEG 910B5, which is the tool of how the SEG is calculated. That was new. Secondly, we have impacts from 3 funding cycles of federal money since the time that we approved the last budget, which I want to remind the board, we cut $10 million. We also have been told that they are reviewing the 910B5, and we may get a new form in the next few days. So this may also change the picture. And lastly, the not federal, but the family income index factor, which will not be part of the SEG, has still yet to be allocated, as the third cycle of federal funding, ESSER 3, has not been allocated, nor have the directions been given. And the last factor that makes this so difficult is this is the latest we've ever gotten the unit value and to be able to start. The governor did not sign House Bill 2 until the very last day. We got the unit value on Friday of last week. So it's been a mad scramble, and there's still a lot of unknowns. But what we do know is that with decreased enrollment of 600 students, with already a trajectory of lower enrollment because of declining birth rates in Santa Fe County, we knew it was going to be a difficult year. But little did we know that we would be in such a time crunch with so many unknowns this late in the game. So this is the best information we have as of today. All right, Robert. I also ask if you can hold your questions. There's a couple of slides that aren't numbered, but if you put the page of what the title was, we can go back. It's just a little bit better that way because your questions may be answered as we progress through the presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We recently attended the New Mexico Association of School Business Officials, the NMASBO Spring Budget Conference, and we have several updates that are pertinent to the implementation of the budget. Legislatively required a 1.5% salary increase to all instructional and all non-instructional personnel has been mandated. No additional funding is to provide increases for teachers who are advancing levels or to address the salary compaction on salary schedules. Extended learning and K-5 plus will be included in the SEG or the state equalization guarantee. The family income index, it'll be a separate calculation and it will not be included in the SEG. As Dr. Garcia had already mentioned, there were major changes to the 910B5, which is the SEG tool. That is what we use to build our budget and see what kind of revenue we are going to bring in the SEG. The hold harmless provision, that is something that was brought in by the Public Education Department to help school districts have somewhat of a balanced budget. If they were to see less in their SEG, it would be supplemented with hold harmless funding. Continuing on, Senate Bill 42 provides for a 1% increase in the ERB employer contribution for both fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. That 1% increase that I'm talking about here, you'll see later on in the presentation on the impacts to the budget. Also proposed New Mexico Public Schools Insurance Authority, NMCIA, are premium changes pending NMCIA board approval. Those will take effect October 1st, 2021, and will impact the monthly employee contributions. The high options will see a 6% increase and the low options will see a 3.6% increase. I've done some research on the NMCIA premium changes, and although it is pending board approval, it is expected that it will pass. Moving on to the update on the FY22 unit value. The initial unit value is $4,770.70. This information was provided to the district by the Public Education Department on April 9th. This is an increase of $233.95 from the FY21 initial unit value. It's an approximate increase of 5.16%. I would like to reiterate that although we are seeing an increase of 5.16%, we are not seeing an increase of the ability to spend in 5.16%. Also, FY22 House Bill 2 amended Public School Finance Act to remove local and federal revenue credits, however, not state credits such as energy efficiency credits. Due to this, we did see some sort of an impact on our 910B5 for the FY22 budget building. The membership comparisons, as Dr. Garcia mentioned earlier, we have seen a decline in membership of 615 students to be exact. The total membership in FY21, which is our current fiscal year, was built on 12,205 membership. And in FY22, our SEG tool was built on 11,590 membership. That is something that we report to the Public Education Department, and they build our SEG tool. So that is not something in the district's control to fluctuate those numbers on that budget building.
I do want to mention on this particular, can you go back for a minute? I do want to
Yes.
go back on this issue, that the revenue that's tied to these numbers fluctuated on the 910B5, which I have questioned the PED, and we're still waiting an answer for that because this impacts the whole harmless. It turned out that whole harmless does exist, but it doesn't apply to everybody. You know, remember the idea that we would all be held harmless based on our enrollment. And what they have said is if you even got $1 more, you would not qualify for whole harmless. The extended learning money was put in the SEG. Last year, we didn't have extended learning school-wide. Even though you haven't voted for it yet, we can project, we asked for a projection on extended learning and we projected district-wide. That accounted for more dollars. It didn't seem to me that that was the legislative intent to count that. So they are researching it, and if our challenge made any difference, then that 910B5 form and how they calculate that would change for everyone in the state. With that said, we are still challenging how they are calculating that we receive $500,000 more than the year before, because they're using a different number than we had when we submitted our 910B5 at the end of the year. This is very complicated and convoluted. I know it sounds like you're going around in circles, but the PED understands our challenge. They are reviewing it. They said we would get an answer. It was supposed to be yesterday. Then I understand we're going to get an answer today or tomorrow. We didn't get it today, so maybe it'll be tomorrow and the next time we present. But we're fighting and we're questioning. When I say we're fighting, I mean we're advocating to make sure that Santa Fe Public Schools gets every dollar that it's entitled to. and that it meets legislative intent. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. And later on in the presentation, you will see the financial impact from the 615 membership. This is the FY22 SEG tool. This is the units from the 910B5 broken out into the actual dollar amount. You can see the small size adjustment, almost every single.
Before you do that, let me explain a little more about this page, Robert,
Okay.
if you don't mind. So
Absolutely.
if you, these are, remember that the membership, each student is 1 unit, right? Or certain factors are 1 unit, but some are weighted. I think I've explained this to you before. And so all of like small size adjustment, we got less, so that impact was 429,000. But when we look at special ed, it's not cutting it by $419,000. I am saying because we have less students, we generated this amount, less or more money. Okay. So it's not that we are saying this is the actual money that was generated because we had less kids. Okay, go ahead, Robert.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Yes, and all of these programs are instrumental in building the SEG tool and calculating out the SEG. So as you can see, there's significant negative impacts to the FY22 SEG tool. As Dr. Garcia mentioned, small size adjustment it's showing a negative 429,000 between the current fiscal year FY21 and what the 910B5 for FY22 has came in. Same thing with special education, a negative $419,000 impact there. Bilingual ed, negative 238,000. Our at-risk index, almost $1 million of a negative impact there. The staffing cost multiplier, T&E and TCI index, we did see a slight increase there of $300,000. There was a small factor on the T&E and the TCI index average this year. It was about 0.009% of a difference. Also, elementary fine arts generated less membership, resulting in a negative $149,000. Elementary PE, negative $37,000. And national board certified teachers, there was a slight increase from the current fiscal year, resulting in $22,000. These impacts bring the total FY22 deficit to $1.9 million. And on top of the $1.9 million that we just discussed, there's preliminary impacts of the FY22 operational budget. As we mentioned, the decline in membership, 615 membership, that is almost a $3 million impact to the operational budget. I mentioned earlier that there is a 1.5% salary increase that was legislatively required for all instructional and non-instructional staff. That is almost $1 million. The estimate of the NIMSIA benefits increase on the employee side is $345,000. The estimate of the employer.
Excuse me, Mr. Martinez, and this is the one that the board has in the past voted to pay. Okay, that is really the employees increase.
Yeah.
But you have in the past voted to pay for that. Okay.
Yes, and then moving on to the 3-tier teacher licensure movement. This is those teachers that have qualified and been able to move from tier 1 to tier 2 or from tier 2 to tier 3. Estimated $500,000 impact there. Our utilities have increased from the current fiscal year FY21 to the estimated expenditures for FY22 of about $530,000. Our NIMSIA risk premium did decline slightly, $75,000. And as Dr. Garcia mentioned earlier, by removing extended learning from the 910B5, we did see what the public education department said was additional revenue of $503,000. As Dr. Garcia mentioned, we're still waiting direction and some guidance from the public education department on some communication there, just on how we really are going to move forward and getting the correct version of what we believe our 910B5 should be.
And, you know, it could be that this is correct. We don't know. And they're still calculating it and trying to figure out. However, the 503,000, when you look at what, because we haven't shown you the bottom line yet. If you recall last year, we estimated that we would be short like $7 million. Well, see, I'll show you the next slide. Go ahead, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. So the preliminary impacts of the FY22 operational budget on this slide are negative 5.1 million. As Dr. Garcia mentioned, the total estimated operational budget impacts between the SEG tool impact and the FY22 operational budget impact we just discussed brings the estimated budget impacts to the $7.1 million.
Which was very close to what we estimated last year. So let's go on, and you tell me if I'm supposed to, I think I'm supposed to go next, right, Mr. Martinez?
Yes, this is you.
So as I said, we're this is me. We are awaiting clarification. So I will hopefully have better numbers in a couple of days. Is where we're at, in my opinion, that this would be the worst case scenario. I would hope that we don't get anything else that would be different. Now, keep in mind what I'm worried about. I know the public ed department is going to have to hold back a certain amount of money, right? Because more kids may show up. But here's the deal. You know, a lot of people forget that the SEG, the State Equalization Guarantee, and what is allocated is a finite pie, and that the State Equalization Guarantee is a mechanism to get the money out. If there are more students, the unit value will go down. So it's a mixed bag. I think it would be good to have more kids. We may generate for Santa Fe a little bit more money, but overall the unit value would go down. Unless the public ed department held back money. And if those kids didn't materialize, we would see an increase in the SEG mid-year. Now, there is an opportunity for us to project that, let's say we say 200 kids we think are going to come back. We could build that into the budget. But if they don't come back, we have to pay it back in October, which would be very difficult to have to cut that, you know, at that time of year. If we see a 1% increase, we would get funded for this fiscal year, but those dollars would not come until February. And again, we would probably see the unit value go down if that happens statewide. Different districts, depending on where they are with their cash balances and their knowledge of fluctuation of student enrollment, will be making decisions about that. My preliminary advice from looking at all of this and having looked at it statewide and worked on operational budgets for many, many years is that we do the 1%. Hopefully we get the increase, that we not over project, because I am worried about an October decrease. I think would be very difficult for us to absorb, with the amount of cash balance that we have. Budget submissions will be contingent on funding. I don't remember what that meant, Robert. I guess it, you know, I guess it just depends on how much money we get, right? Is what we're going to submit. I'm not really sure what that bullet meant. I think it meant something to us at the time. Do you remember what that was about?
I think it was just in regards to what you just said. I mean, our budget submission will, I mean, it'll be contingent on any time. I mean, we'll get into the federal side of it here shortly, and it just depends on, I believe, what the board initiatives are and what kind of funding is additional.
Before
from
I go into
additional-
the federal funding, can you go back to the tool and show the small size adjustment and all of that? So one of the things that I want to explain to the board is we look at the at-risk index, you know, and the following slide on the enrollment and the decrease in enrollment is that, and for PE and fine arts and actually bilingual ed, that the district has for years, not all schools have music and art, right? We have chosen to make that a priority. Not all schools have the level of nursing that we provide. Not all of the schools have the level of PE that we provide. So I think makes the case why the Santa Fe Public Schools became a plaintiff district on sufficient funding. When we get the family income index, that may help fund some of these things that the district has been funding that we didn't get money for, right? That we could have maybe provided other kinds of programming. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. And as we continue to move through, things will become clearer, right? And so I just want to make that clear that, like, for example, the bilingual ed program and what they generate, we pay far more from operational than what we generate. And the same is true for what we generate in the at-risk index and what we provide in terms of counseling services does not cover that, or all the other kinds of things that we do for at-risk students is not covered. And so I really do think that the Family Income Index was an answer to sufficient funding under Yazzie Martinez. Now that money will go directly to the sites. It won't cover district personnel, and that's okay. It will provide services, and we don't even have a clue of how that is going to be calculated and how much we will generate. And we don't know when that money will be coming to us yet. So hopefully that will be forthcoming soon. And again, the public ed department and everyone else has been behind the 8 ball due to the late signing of HB 2. So let's go on. To the first slide here, this was what we all talked about, the CARES Act. And if you recall, the legislature took a little over $1 million credit. We still got this funding, but we got cut out of the operational budget. You'll remember that we protested that 1.2 million cut. When we were balancing the budget last year, when we cut 10 million, you remember that we shifted these costs to CARES Act. This money is now gone. Will be gone by the end of the year. It was one-time funding. So as we're balancing the budget, I've got to look at where are we going to pay for this, right? Or are we going to cut anything there? And like, for example, the nutrition services, we probably won't need that same level, so that'll help. But instructional coaches, we cut $273,000 from contract services. Do we cut more from there, etc.? So that's one set of decisions that as we balance the budget, we need to look at. Let's go to the next slide. The next slide is ESSER 2. And we had to submit placeholder so that we could get the bar. And one of the things that you voted for was the retention stipends. You recall that? The 1.3 million. And so we had to give a certain amount to ATC. You have 3 years to spend it. You don't have to spend it all in the first year. We shifted because I knew, I projected that we would have a cut in the SEG. So we moved communities and schools over here. This is the one time that I've seen with federal funding that we're allowed to supplant. Now, I don't know if that's going to be true with ESSER 3. We haven't gotten the guidelines yet. And Ms. Cooper, who manages the federal funds for these programs, is online. Ms. Cooper, have you heard yet if when we may be getting the ESSER 3 allocation?
Hi, Dr. Garcia. I understand that that should be coming mid-May up to May 24th.
Oh my gosh. See how late? I mean, it just really makes it so difficult. Our budget is due June 1st. And do you know if we're going to be able to supplant with ESSER 3?
I understand that we will.
Okay, so that will be helpful. But I see a lot of weekends in our future and late nights working this out if we don't get the allocation till that late, which is very frustrating. So we may have to have a special meeting. You know, when you look at the calendar that we set out, we may not have all the information by the time we need it. I don't know how some school districts are managing this that have had to submit their budgets or already, you know, like this coming week, next week rather. So I'm not going to read these. You can look, you know, having to cut out of the operational budget. This is really placeholder. Now, as we look at how severe the budget is, we may have to put other things here and make cuts. I don't want anybody to take anything to the bank or panic. I want to have more information before I bring this back to you of what we're going to actually submit. This went in and they know it's a placeholder. And you can change this every submit it the first time, but we did have to submit something in order to be able to have the bar released, and everybody just submitted a placeholder. So you will have an opportunity to vote on ESSER 2, okay? And then ESSER 3, we don't know, as Ms. Cooper said, we haven't gotten that yet. And what's the next slide? Oh, so, you know, I would like to hear your thoughts. I know that some years you have told us, you know, certain priorities that you have in terms of like wish lists. I don't think that's really going to be viable this year, but it would be good to hear your general thoughts about what we're looking at. Do you have the calendar before we go to discussion, just so they know context? Can you go to that? Robert, you can talk about this if you want.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Garcia. So as we mentioned earlier, we did receive the unit value in the program funding after spring budget workshop, which we received April 9th, but those are the dates that we attended the spring budget workshop through NMASBO. What we're doing here tonight, the Board of Education update on budget priorities, and moving on into May, site-based budget reviews, those are pending. And we will be presenting a review of the operational budget to the board on May 6th at the May 6th meeting, and review the initial operating budget at the May 20th regular Board of Education meeting. A tentative special Board of Education meeting could be requested on May 27th, as Dr. Garcia just mentioned. This is all contingent on when we are able to receive the ESSER 3 ARPA funding, and when we get those the guidance back from the PED on how we're moving forward with our 910B5.
What was the date that Ms. Cooper just said she thought we would get? Did she say May 25th? See, what day of the week? May 24th?
Yes.
So that is that a Monday or a Tuesday?
I believe it's a Monday.
It's a Monday.
So, I mean, I think we can work out some scenarios. It is conceivable. That's 20 million over 3 years. Okay. So that's a lot more money. And if we can supplant with it, I think that will be helpful, but it's not recurring revenue. And so it would be a stopgap for a few years for the district to decide how it wants to address the declining enrollment. We also would know how many of our kids have returned So it buys a little bit of time. But at the end of the day, that the issue of declining enrollment in that trend will need to be addressed. Everything is in flux. You know, when we met with Eric Harrigan with RC Capital, there was a lot of discussion about demographics and how COVID has changed things, and people moving into the state from New York and California to get out of, you know, highly populated areas. Now, whether Santa Fe is attracting, you know, those families, or are they single adults, or are they older people? You know, I don't have any data. Anything that I hear right now is anecdotal, right? But at least we will know for sure next year how many students actually return. That's not going to address this birth rate decline that we have seen, right, in Santa Fe County. But back to this, we will share with you the most updated information that we have on May 6th. We can go over some elements of the operating budget. There are certain elements there that are fairly stable, regardless of what's happening with the operational budget or the chunk on the federal, on this new money. And my guess is that the May 27th meeting, we may want to start it earlier. It may be a longer meeting, because I think we're not going to have lots of bites of the apple, you know. June 1st, what day of the week is that?
I believe it's a Tuesday. Let me make sure.
It is a Tuesday.
Yeah, so I mean, it's possible that we could do a special board meeting on Monday. Oh no, that's a vacation day, isn't it? Isn't that Memorial Day?
Memorial Day is the 31st of May, the
Yeah.
day before. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not opposed to, you know, me. It's like, what's a holiday? But I would imagine that would be tough on everybody to come. So the May 27th may need to be a longer meeting, or something in between if we get more information. And so I'm sorry that this is so tentative. I even thought about saying, do we do this? But how do we keep pushing this away? So I have staff, we're working on this. We are meeting again. We've been working on this every day since we've gotten the information. We'll be meeting again on tomorrow and on Monday. And I hope by Thursday, we will have more clarity from the PED on some of those missing pieces. So with that said, Mr. Martinez, do you have anything else that you want to share before we open it up to questions and discussion from the board?
Not at this time. Thank you, Dr. Garcia.
All righty, we're ready to stand for questions.
Okay. Thank you. As a brief comment, this is my 5th budget with the Santa Fe Public Schools and Dr. Garcia in particular, and the first finance subcommittee study session on our budget has always been awful. And this one, well, it's really awful, in some ways takes the cake, because, you know, we had all these hold harmless hopes. In some ways, I guess that's mitigated a little bit by stimulus money, but as Dr. Garcia points out, it's one-time money. So that's a very serious consideration for the board. Okay, questions from the board. And what I would suggest at this stage is that if somebody wants to, you know, take the lead in a question that came sort of early in the presentation, that we move roughly through in order that the presentation went, if we can, but we'll see how it goes. Questions from the board?
Madam President, I have some questions.
Okay, go ahead, Vice President Garcia.
Comments and question or two is, you know, first of all, Dr. Garcia, thank you for your team. Excellent job as into moving forward. Can somebody mute their phone back there, please? Excellent. Thank you for your team, Dr. Garcia, and yourself as well. You know that, and your team, and the solvency for the schools as into keeping our budget going. Appreciate that totally. I'd like to thank the community, Santa Fe County, our county assessor, for actually taking up the valuations of a lot of the developments going out here in the community. Appreciate that. um, hold harmless. Mr. Martinez, can you explain what hold harmless is? Because I understand hold harmless as into not paying tax when you go get groceries. So, and then also in the premium for staff of so they're going to get a 6% raise on their checks all the time. And then also on the utilities, I thought we were doing good on the utilities as into with all the solar stuff we're doing, that we're saving money. So once again, hold harmless, premium for staff at 6% higher, and then also the utilities, if you can answer those three questions.
Sure thing, Vice President Garcia. The hold harmless was initially put in to help districts that were going to see a negative impact on their SEG. As of right now, off of what we were provided by the PED, they are showing that 503 net increase for the district. As Dr. Garcia mentioned, that is still under review, and there might be some adjustments to that, but the hold harmless is really put into bring those districts that would see a negative impact on their SEG back to where they were from the prior year, or what would be FY21.
And just to be clear on that point, a negative impact is defined as $1 less than what we got when all the units fell out before.
That is correct. And,
Okay.
and what's also under review is.
Because I would argue there's a negative impact from
huge
our
negative
enrollment,
impact.
but
Exactly, exactly. And the other part of it is that we saw a huge increase in extended learning that we submitted compared to what we had last year. So that shouldn't have been, in my opinion, calculated. And I think that they said a whole day working on that at PED yesterday.
So we end up being penalized in the following year for doing that in the previous year because it all got lumped together.
Yeah, well, yes, and also because last year we had less extended learning for next year. And so therefore, oh, you've got all this extra money. But even without extended learning, because of that 500,000, they're saying we don't qualify. And I think it has to do with the beginning numbers. And so this is what we also submitted in writing clarification on that. We've received no clarification yet, because one figure shows us at 112, right? Or what was it, Robert? 114, right?
114.5 was the FY21.
114 million 5, and our SEG on the 910B5 is like 112 million. But then when they calculated it, they said, no, it was really 106. I'm like, okay, which number are you using? And so that started a cascade of craziness that they're having to deal with, and we haven't gotten an answer yet. Do you want to go to the next question, Mr.
So we
Martinez?
need clarification there. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Martinez. Please go on.
No worries. Vice President Garcia, moving along to the NMCIA benefits on the employee side. The 6% is for the high option, and I believe it was 3.5 for the low option. But when you take the
hold on,
average
Mr. Martinez. High option in terms of your insurance plan, Mr. Garcia, okay? And so when you know how people can get different options and one costs more than the other, maybe you have a higher or lower deductible. That's what he means by high option. But the 6% increase was not in pay. This was in the cost of the premiums. Continue.
Thank you. Which it comes out to about 5.6% averaged out between the employees who have high option and who have chosen low option. A majority of employees in the district have chosen high option premium. And if you will repeat
the increase
for me
in pay, Mr. Garcia, members of the board, is 1.5%, not 6%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And utilities?
The increase to utilities, that's merely an estimate. In my opinion, I would assume that the utilities would go up from FY21 due to a number of things. I know that schools were not open during the time virtual learning was going on. I know that many sites throughout the district were not functioning at 100% due to the COVID pandemic. And now with us moving back into in-person learning and employees working back in the district, I would expect to see an increase in the utilities.
We also have, I think, purifiers all over the place. We aren't as energy efficient because we have windows open. I mean, all of those things are going to impact it compared to the way we normally operate. And we will work with Ms. Randall. She'll show us the savings from this year. And so when we finalize the budget, we will work with her on that. But I agree with Mr. Martinez on his calculus on this.
Thank you, Madam President. Also, once again, Superintendent, you and your team, thank you for doing a great job on the budget. It's very hard whenever we talk about SCG, and just for the general public is thank you to my colleagues, because people don't understand how the budget works for public schools nationwide, and it's very challenging to all of us. And you guys do an excellent job, and I just wanted to bring that as part of the record. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Madam
from the
President.
board? Yes, go ahead, Secretary Bozay.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia. I do not have any specific questions per se, because again, your presentation was thorough and easy-ish to understand, even though it's complicated material. And I don't know if Board Member Price is still here. I know this is the point during the budget talks where she jumps in and talks about the crucial need for nurses in every school. And I just feel like on the heels of the pandemic, yes, we don't have room for priorities, but I'm going to say them anyway, that I feel very strongly about nurses in every school, as well as counselors. I think that we are going to be dealing with some, situations that we can't even really fully grasp yet until kids are fully back in person. But I think there's going to be a lot of issues that we have to deal with, and taking care of the whole child and making sure that they're having their social emotional needs met. That burden can't fall solely on the teachers and the administrators. There should be dedicated people to help with that. We've had a lot of trauma in the last year, and we really need to heal. And I think that those two things are an important way to address that. Thank you.
Let me comment on that, Madam President.
Please.
Please keep in mind that every position that we have is important, or we wouldn't have it, right? But if we have 600 students less, there is less demand. It doesn't mean we're cutting counseling services or nursing services, but we may have to right size the staffing to fit the number of students. So let's take let's take a school of 200 kids that now has 150 students. You're going to right size the staffing, which could mean a cut or a 0.5 cut in counseling or a 0.5 cut in nursing. It doesn't mean kids are getting less service. There are less kids to serve. We don't have the funding to match, right, what we used to have. And so that's where I want people to understand that we intend to maintain the same proportionate level of staffing based on the number of students we have. But in the past, we haven't done that. In the past, when we've lost 100 kids or 125 kids, guess where we've taken the cuts typically? At the district level. And we have cut and cut and cut and cut and cut. Maybe I can scrape another FTE somewhere, possibly, or we can make some shifts. However, all is not lost, because I do believe that there's legitimate funding that we can get from the Family Income Index to help fund some of these things that the state had not funded in the past, because a lot of districts didn't provide what we have provided. So, we're going to do our best to keep things right-sized, but also ensure that kids get all the services and the music and the art and the PE that you all have prioritized in the past. Okay.
So,
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. And I guess that's what I was getting to, is that if we do have extra money that that those would be my priorities to make
Okay.
sure that both physical and mental health are addressed if there's extra funds, specifically related to the issues from the pandemic.
And then a good number
Thank
of
you.
our nurses are also paid for out of Medicaid, I believe. And that also is covered, wouldn't be touched by the operational budget or what's happening there.
Madam President, just on that note, thank you, Dr. Garcia. And in my district, I know it's several kids that actually have some challenge needs. And it actually hurts me because, every kid's important. Obviously, we know that as my colleagues and as a district. And the challenge kids that need some assistance, we need to take care of them. But as long as we have that in mind, I know Mr. Chavez is listening. And so just keep that in mind. But thank you, Secretary, for bringing that up. Like I said, challenge kids, it's hard for them. And so I just want to bring that up. But thank you, Madam President.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, from what I understand, the family income index goes directly to the schools, right? To the particular schools. So it wouldn't go to the district.
It does come to the district, but it's allocated by school, by population. So we will be sending it to the schools. The schools will be, there's parameters. We'll have to make sure that it's spent appropriately. And we can give them the guidelines. I don't remember exactly. I think it's for remediation, tutoring, maybe extending time.
Structured literacy, math, and at-risk programs.
On this point, this was one of my questions. Can we go back to square one and explain this family income index? And we sort of jumped in the middle there, but Dr. Garcia, I'd love just
It's just a new factor.
Okay.
They reduced at risk a little bit. So I don't know. That's why I said I haven't seen the formula yet. I don't know if it's a 0.5 of a unit or 0.12 of a unit. I have no idea what the factor is. So I can't even calculate how much we're going to get. And so as soon as we get that information, we will give it to you, but it's just another weight. It's in response to Yazi Martinez to help address equitable opportunity for students to be successful. And not every school will get the same amount. It's very per pupil driven. It's very similar to Title I in that regard, right? Of how that is calculated. But in this case, it's not like school-wide, it's not district-wide. But that money, the SACs will work with the principal and make priorities. But if we've had to cut, say, stop programming that we've provided out of operational, even though we were not funded for it, it would make sense that they would decide, okay, we're going to pay for counseling if we had to cut it from there, right? Or additional counseling or whatever. I really don't know yet till I see the parameters and how much each school is, not each school, but schools will get.
Okay. Please continue, Dr. Gonzalez. Sorry about that.
No, that was it. I was just, it's my understanding that the family income index goes directly to I know it comes to the district, but it's assigned for particular schools.
Correct.
And just to say on Secretary Bose's point, I completely agree. And as we look at, how we operationalize our community schools resolution, looking to community partners for, and I know we have some great ones already, but that mental health piece seems a really critical thing to ask our community partners to help with, because it will be manifesting in the schools. It's real everywhere. And as we know, the schools are the business end of a lot of what happens in society. So I appreciate Secretary Bose bringing that up.
That is noted. That is noted. And also there's extended learning money. And that also for the after school time will also involve community partners where the school SACs can look at what kinds of activities and reach out to our community to help provide those services, right? And then we also have federal after school money with Century 21 and so on. So there is going to be it's crazy, there's going to be a lot of money, yet we're having to make cuts in certain areas. But a lot of support, I think, coming for our families and kiddos. And for that, I'm very grateful. And for the extended learning, and if the board chooses to allow us to apply for it, we had to give them a projection so that they could distribute the money. Ms. Zink has worked with the team and come up with 10 additional days that have been built into the calendar painlessly so that our kids can get another 10 days of instruction. And that's terrific. And I really hope that the board will approve that. We've also presented it to Ms. Mayor. And so I don't think people will feel it much. And for the staff, I mean, they are working an additional 10 days, but they will see also 10 additional days of income coming. And it will also benefit the kids so much. And there's a wonderful after school component. So that also, I think, helps generate more support, but also income to our providers in the community. So it's an economic stimulus, no matter how you cut all of these, right? At the end of the day, because people will either be employed or contracted to provide services to our students.
And in a conversation with the mayor, the city is very much looking at a mental health impact post-pandemic. And so I would imagine the county and their behavioral health stuff is too. And
yeah, I mean, there's going to be quite a bit of money coming into all the entities, right, under
exactly
the Recovery Act.
So I had a question, and I think it's 3 slides from here forward. It's the SEG tool. Yep. And just to say,
yes,
this is my 5th budget. I swear I've never heard 910B5 today, and that's like the worst bureaucratic name for a form ever. But there it is. School funding. So I mean, I know the answer on some level is that's how the units fall out, but I'm wondering, Dr. Garcia, if you can flesh out anything about the at-risk index, which is almost half of the impact
they
here.
reduce the factor.
Okay.
Well, it's 10. It was 10.3 million, and now it's 9.4 million. So the factor went down a little bit, but then they increased the family income index. Now, hopefully they increased it by more than what they cut it. And then again, overall, all of these go down because we have less kiddos too.
Yeah.
Right? Because these are the weights on those units, on the basic unit.
I'm sorry, are you saying the family income index is applied in this piece on the 910B5? I'm just going to see how many times I can say that.
No, the 910B5, no. They did not put it in the SCG. It's going to be a separate allocation.
Okay, but the at-risk index, the factor went down, it sounds like, was
by a little bit, but the number, do you remember, Mr. Martinez, how much that factor went down by?
0.009.
Yeah,
okay.
So it was a fractional amount. But the main reason that all of these have gone down is because you remember you had the basic unit, which we have less, and then the multiplier is going to go down because we have less kids. So art, music, PE, special ed, bilingual, they all went down because we have less students.
Right.
And then the staff multiplier went up because we have people with higher degrees.
Yeah, but I think what we're seeing in this at-risk index is partly because the units went down so much, we see how significant our at-risk index is, because this is basically $1 million of a $1.9 million total decrease.
Correct.
It's a big proportion of it.
Exactly. You're exactly right.
Okay.
And we may have more kids who fall under at risk per se, right? In terms proportionately.
Right. Sure. And that, yeah, we'll see. Okay. And I think on the stimulus funds with the 3 years. We don't need to go to that slide. I did have some questions there, but I think Dr. Garcia, your explanation is that that's fairly preliminary. So I think as we see that one flesh out a little bit more.
It will be, especially after we know more what the family income index can be used for, and particularly when we see ESSER 3.
Yeah.
I think will influence this. Unfortunately, I think there's not going to be a major news flash for you all until the late May meeting, till we get all the pieces. Because if in fact we don't get ESSER 3 until May 25th, that's crazy, right? And hopefully we'll get it sooner, but it's frustrating.
Okay, so on board priorities, there's a couple of things I'd like to just tease out. One was built into the budget, one of the budget slides we saw, which is holding our employees harmless on premium increases. I just want to check and see.
That's something the board still want to.
Correct. That's something I want to check and just see, you know, if the board still wants to do that. It is my intention that we need to continue to do that for our employees, but I'd just like to give an opportunity for any other board members to object if that's the case. If you don't want to hold them harmless, if, you know, there's some argument as to why we wouldn't do it. I just am not clear what it is right now, so.
Madam President, I agree that we should continue doing that. It is a hefty increase. I mean, I don't recall what it was last year, but I deal with insurance on a regular basis, and I'm very familiar with that business side of things. And so that's a big increase, but I definitely don't think that should be passed on to the staff in our district, especially in a year where they're only going to get a 1.5% raise. So I agree.
Yeah. Dr. Gonzalez. Yeah. There you
go. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, I too agree with that. I do not want to pass it on to the employees.
And you understand it's not the employer's increase, it's the employees' increase. It's what we've been paying. So I make sure you're aware of that.
Okay. I would agree with Secretary Bose's stated priority, I would just say as well, and has been sort of a consistent one of, I think we're already there around nursing, our levels of coverage per school, but maintaining that.
That proportion based on the number of students.
Thank you, appreciate it, that proportion, proportional coverage, making sure we don't have a decrease in, and, you know, if there were any way to increase or again to compensate with our community partners. Any other thoughts on board priorities for the budget? Again, we don't have a lot of leeway, but this is the opportunity we get to say what we're looking at.
Madam President, this is Rudy. I agree with both of you. How can we help out? This is hard for me. The economy, socialism, and everything else is getting a little tougher throughout this COVID stuff. And so whatever we can do to help out the employee, let's try to look at that. Once again, Larry and Mr. Chavez, I know you're listening. So how do we do that? I don't know. But
I want to clarify though that Mr. Chavez is working with us on the team, but I'm still responsible for this budget through June 30th of what we're submitting. So we're working on this with Ms. Sink, Ms. Wagner, Mr. Chavez, and I want to leave him a very sound budget as well as you. He is participating with us, but he's a member of the cabinet like he always has been until the 1st of July.
Understood. Thank you. Just you know, the most important thing that people don't do these days is communicate. But as long as we're communicating as a district with our community, our leaders, and our policymakers, because I don't do social media. I don't do that Snapchat stuff. And, but as long as we're just all on the same page and communicate, that's important to me. Thank you, Madam President.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, I'd like to make sure that we have a priority for community schools. And I know I was surprised that the governor did not sign the community schools bill, but there is funding for it, I think, in the budget, the state budget.
So I want to clarify, there is money for community schools. We've applied for 2 more planning grants. And there's 4, those are not in the SCG. Now
Right.
there's the 400,000 for communities in schools that was in the budget that we tentatively moved to ESSER 2. And so we'll have to see how things play out there, but that's how we're handling that piece.
So, Madam President, sorry to interrupt. So can Mr. Martinez or Dr. Garcia, can you tell for the record, what is community schools and how does that work? What's happening out there with that budget?
So you're
Mr.
talking
Martinez,
about
you want me to do it?
the application for the funding Dr. Garcia just mentioned for
Right, but
community schools planning.
Yeah, but so here's I get a little bit lost. So you have Gonzalez Community School, that's okay, same community school, I get it. So the funding is federal funding, is it state funding, and there's state money there? How does that work, just for the record, so that we.
Right. So Madam President, members of the board, so to clarify, a long time ago, when they decided to expand schools to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they just said, you're going to stay at a community school. You're not going to a junior high or a middle school. And I have often felt like we ought to change the names of those schools to just Gonzalez K-8 or just
Yes.
Gonzalez School, okay? Because that's confusing to people because they conflate it with the community schools movement that happened at about the same time too. And the community schools, if you remember, we passed a resolution. It's got 4 pillars. It's a way of involving community in the leadership of the school, how they look at the services that the kids need, what are the priorities. There's 2 funding sources. One is from the state, and it's not federal at this time. We have 2 that are funded from the state from the last planning cycle, and that is Cesar Chavez and Santa Fe High. We've applied for 2 more this year, and I don't remember who they are. I don't know if Ms. Ibarra is watching or Ms. O'Brien. If somebody knows who those 2 are, you can share. But there's 2 more that were applied. Go ahead. Go ahead.
This is Ms. Romero. Thank you. It is Kearney, Milagro, and we have a 3rd one that also applied, and that's Nina Otero.
Okay, so we have 3 additional. And then we have communities in schools, and I want to think there's about 14. It is also a community schools program, but it is possible that we, like we do at Cesar Chavez, have communities in schools and a community schools coordinator, okay? And they can coexist. We have put approximately, the board approved about 400,000 a year. We have a contract with CIS for 5 years, dependent on funding. And this year, as we were looking at balancing the budget, right now is a placeholder, place communities in schools under ESSER 2 for funding for the next 2 years. So we'll just see how all of this plays out, but it is noted by Ms. Gonzalez. Now, I don't know if you all are going to vote on the priorities or not, Ms. Noble, but we did note that she mentioned that it was a priority. And I'll leave that to you, Madam President, how you want to deal with voting or not on the priorities. I hope I answered your question, Mr. Garcia.
Yes, you did. I just want to be on record because it's, like my colleagues, public schools nationwide is challenging. So, but yes, you did. Thank you, Dr. Garcia.
Okay, anything else on the priorities anyone wants to bring up? What I would say,
Madam President, I just want to make sure every kid's important in our community. I understand that. And I just want my challenge kids that are in my district, just as long as we put that in the prior list as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Yeah, and I am absolutely certain we have children with challenges in every district. And we do try and approach things equitably, and it does seem as if there's effort at the state level. That's part of what it sounds like the Family Income Index is about, to do that as well. So what I'd suggest, and open to this from the board, and given that we don't have board member Price, but also, and there's so little leeway, what I'd suggest is we've had a discussion where nursing and counseling and working on our community schools model have been the priorities we've discussed. I'd be inclined not to have motions and adopt formal priorities, but to trust Dr. Garcia and the team to have heard us and bring us back to the best possible budget, where there is, I'm not gonna, well, where we take care of all of our students equitably as much as possible. I was almost gonna say there's no student left behind, but I'm not, it's phrasing George Bush era act of testing and all sorts of things that we're still dealing with now. So is that amenable to the board? And obviously there's an opportunity now to say more about priorities if we need to. See a thumbs up from Carmen, a thumbs up from Sarah.
I'm fine also.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Martinez. Very clear presentation. As Secretary Bose also mentioned, thank you, Dr. Garcia, and everybody else who I know has been working hard on this, on top of, last week's extra push and the week before's extra push and the year before, every week before that, for a long, long time, it seems. But thank you. This is great, and we will hopefully get some good clarifications that
And I
make
do-
this budget look less painful.
And Madam President, I just want to assure the board that, do I have the floor, Madam President?
You do, sorry, I think we just have an open mic there, which maybe Elmer, somebody could help with.
Dr. Lujan.
I just wanted to assure the board, but I don't know if Mr. Garcia can hear me. Mr. Chavez has been working with us very closely. And also part of what the beauty of you all making this decision early, and that, well, it really wasn't early in terms of, I think it was a good process. I don't mean it in that regard, but while we're still in this, we've got about a nice 10-week period of time to orient, transition, show him how I go about building the budget. So when he has to do this next year, he worked with Mr. Martinez and I, sharing the philosophy, the approach. Obviously, when he builds the budget, I told him, he may use a whole different strategy of how we go about doing it. But he very much is included in those decisions. But we're also involving many people on the team as well. It really is not, we take a lot of input, and it's a lot of teamwork to get this budget right. So I just want to assure you of that, though, that throughout all these processes, I will be working with Mr. Chavez very closely so that he understands the budget that we wind up passing, right, that he understands it intimately of what all the moving parts are, because it's a very complicated budget this year.
Madam President, thank you. Just in regards to that, Barry has to get some new shoes, but he understands. I appreciate it. And I don't want him wearing your shoes. I wish he could. However, no, I appreciate you and your staff and your team working with him, because Mr. Chavez is he's gonna do a good job, and he has our backing, and I know he's listening, and just thank you for helping him, and thank you for helping the community and all of our students. Appreciate you, Dr. Garcia, and your staff. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, and we appreciate that. As we know, after July, Mr. Chavez will need to implement the budget that we adopt. Okay, moving along at this. Oh, I know there was one thing I did want to say, which is just about scheduling. If there is any way that May 27th meeting, I have a very important work commitment. So to start earlier that day would be very difficult for me. In fact, anyway, that May 27th date, I'm hoping we might find another time other than that.
Madam President, what would you think of May 28th? Because it would give us an additional day. I know it's before a holiday, but if we are not getting, why don't we wait and see when we get ESSER 3? And then we can decide if Wednesday will work. It just freaks me out that if we get that information on Monday, or if the state is running late, that, you know, it's going to be a 24-hour
Well, and the other
project.
thing that I think
So,
what I understood from the explanation was that the intention was we might even meet on June 1st for final adoption of the budget. So I think, you know, maybe just to say, and I think Alma's very helpfully put up advanced planning, but just in terms of that budget planning, if we can stay a little bit flexible, and it sounds like, you know, maybe not make long Memorial Day weekend plans if at all possible, because this is going to be challenging, and maybe that June 1st date does look good. Yes, Dr. Gonzalez.
I'm going to be on a plane on the 27th.
Okay.
So hopefully it will be a different time. I mean, I can be online except for that particular day.
Okay, so the 28th might not be a bad idea. We could even look at a daytime meeting in on the 28th or something. Let's, we can talk about it, and maybe board members, if you know, stare at your calendars hard, and so that we can stay a little bit flexible around that time for our final budget, because things are very late. And Dr. Garcia, is there any chance that they would change that deadline of June 1 for our budget being due to the PED?
Extension, Madam President, what we may do, just because, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Because it keeps telling me I have a unstable internet connection. We could, Mr. Martinez, perhaps ask for an extension, just because they've given us everything so late, and because we still don't know where we're at, that we ask for an extension to June, trying to look at the calendar here, June 3rd, maybe, even June 3rd or June 4th, that they may be willing to do that. So we could also look at that, which would help us all to know where we're at. The difficulty with these really late dates on the budget, is being able to notify staff, right, of their positions. And there's just so much up in the air. As much as we can get it done, we're going to try to do our best. And I'm really going to push to try to get that information sooner than later, is my goal. I like for us, everybody, to leave Memorial Day and know that, we got the budget done. You know, that would be terrific. But let's see. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic and see if I can push the edges of the envelope to get some of this extended, or brought to us sooner rather.
So, Madam President, just really quick, sorry to interrupt. Whatever you guys staff is comfortable with, I'm comfortable with that. You know, just for the record, we met Saturday from 8:30 in the morning till 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. So, you know, as policymakers, and so I didn't know it was Memorial Day weekend, but whatever is good for staff, because I'm good for whatever we got to do. I just cannot meet on Tuesdays, and Thursdays is our board meeting. So whatever you want to do, Madam President.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all very much. We'll stay loose and responsive. Moving on to our action item, Roman numeral 6, our consent agenda. Budget adjustment request here. The big one, it looks like, is stimulus money. that we will adjust our budget for. Are there any questions from the board? Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Second from Vice President Garcia. We'll go ahead and take a roll call vote unless there's any further discussion. Okay, let's start with you this time, Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Secretary Bozay,
Yes.
Vice President Garcia.
Yes, Madam President.
Thank you. And the president votes yes. We'll pass the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board.
Thank you. And thanks again to you and Mr. Martinez and everybody for the clarity of a very complex budget. Roman numeral 7, board discussion and possible action. We moved item C up and we now have item A, the 2021 general obligation bond and mill levy election date. Dr. Garcia.
Oh,
Or is
Madam
this- am I
President.
supposed to say something here?
Well, and Mr. Granada is here to assist us, but the Secretary of State have changed her ruling and decided that we could have a special election if we wanted to. I think we would like to just stay the course now because we've lost time and just stay where we were in November. But Mr. Granada, can you remind me why we needed to do this action item? If they don't have to vote if we stay where we're at, correct?
That's correct. Dr. Garcia, board members, we just wanted to bring this item to your attention if in fact the board would like to go back to the previous plan of having a mail-in election. As Dr. Garcia says, so we would recommend that we stick with the regular election in November.
You've just lost too much time. I think
Yeah.
Mr. Granada was just notified, what, a week ago, a few days ago?
Yeah, last week I got a call from the county clerk, and she had just got off the phone with the Secretary of State, and so I contacted Dr. Garcia right away, and I believe Dr. Garcia contacted the board president. So this is just to bring it to the board's attention. As we said, we would recommend we just stay the course and proceed with the November elections.
And you have a second bite at the apple, but I don't think you'll need it. But if you did in February.
Right, yes. But we hope we will do a great job of educating the public and get it passed on our first try.
You have a
Any-
15-year
Madam President?
history. You have a 15-year history behind you.
Yes. Secretary Bozay.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia. I do tend to agree that at this point we've lost a fair amount of time, but I do have concerns. Our committee members, their term is up at the end of June. And so potentially we're going to have new members of the CRC that I think have expressed interest in helping make sure that the GO bond gets passed and participating and educating the public. And I'm sure that that's a big team that helps do that, but also recognizing that there will be potentially a fair amount of new members on the CRC that haven't been through this whole process. So I just wanted to put that out there for consideration.
Madam President, on that point,
Please.
Madam President, board members, and Officer Bose, they can still be spokespeople. We actually, when we have these campaigns, we bring in all our partners. We do a big rah-rah with them, a big education piece. We get them to go out and talk. All the school PTAs, we engage them. There's a whole process to the campaign. And when they start making the videos and whatnot, and the ads, people who have been on the CRC, who voted for it, can still be spokespeople as as a member of the community. So I think it'll be fine.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense.
Madam President?
Go ahead, Vice President Garcia.
just keep, I understand the CRC. I've been on it for many years, ex-member. Ms. Price is on the CRC, ex-board member. When Cash was on there, however, please keep in mind, Mr. Travis, because I know you're listening, is as into, my grandma doesn't have a cell phone. My grandma doesn't do social media, so let's just get up to those people because she votes. So just keep that in mind, please. Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like there's no significant will from the board to say, let's hurry up and do this in June. Well, I mean, I'm certainly happy now for us. What a year, though. I know the Secretary of State's changed that. But November sounds good. Going with the plan, given the time and all the factors. Okay, so we don't need to act, correct, Mr. Granata?
Board President Noble, that's correct.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
On item B, FY22 board priorities, I think we agreed not to act on that as well. Any further discussion on that? That's item B on our board discussion and possible action items, which moves us then to advanced planning, which is probably good because we're all, I think, showing a little bit of where. Yes, Dr. Garcia, please.
Madam President, on May 6th, we will need an executive session.
Okay, thank you. And Secretary Bozet, is the CRC on the 12th still a go? Do you
Yes,
know?
that is correct.
Okay, and then TBD on the 13th, a special meeting on our educational technology note. All sounds good.
It
and
most
that has
likely
to-
will happen on that day.
Okay, so that has to do with what we need to adopt given the bond sale. That the
Correct. And
presentation.
it's really weird that you probably remember this from past years, that you have to have a special meeting. It can't be like part of the finance subcommittee meeting. It was very
Right.
weird.
So sometimes
And
we've
it's-
even noticed it as a special meeting and then a regular meeting,
Correct. And so
starting
it
an
will
hour
be
later or something.
this time it'll be a special meeting and then a study session.
Got it.
And
I see that now.
we probably won't even need an hour. I think we probably maybe even 15 minutes, but we'll check with Mr. Harrigan and Mr. Melendres.
Okay, thank you. And just to ask, as graduations, it's very exciting to see graduations on our advanced planning. A bunch of them say football field. Are we deciding which football field, or do we know which
because
football field?
The high schools will all be, I don't know why, that one we can fix. They're all going to be at Desert Sage with the exception of Capitol High, and Santa Fe High will be in their own stadiums. But the other three schools, Mandela, Desert Sage, and Early College Opportunity, will all be, it's not at the Desert Sage. Well, it will be. It's the old cap shop, but it's the Desert Sage.
It's the old cap shop.
Right,
Okay.
but it's like when people say, do you remember where the old bowling alley was? You know, that's kind of a marker for finding things in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
You know, they'll say, do you know where the old bowling alley was? Anyway, so.
Which one is the question then?
Well, there's that. But I don't know why Desert Sage of all places says football field. Well, it's a desert. I think that's what they meant. Desert Sage Academy at their football field.
I see. Okay.
And then the other two will be at the same football field. But
Got
we'll
it.
clarify that.
Well, and I
obviously it
see
wasn't
that
clear.
that's, yes, because of course, anyway. All right, any other questions on advanced planning?
But I do want to mention that is still if we stay in turquoise. You know, if things change, we, heaven forbid, go into a different color, it's whatever color we're in 2 weeks before graduation. So.
Got it. Okay, anything else?
Madam President, just really quick, just thank you for my colleagues, and we do, it's a hard job that we do nationwide, locally. Thank you for the community, all of our volunteers, and I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned. On that note, thank you all very much. We'll certainly be in touch and see you very soon.
By the way, if anybody needs a regalia, make sure you contact Ms. Behar. I'll be in touch with you though. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.